President Obama's most glaring failure on the world stage came Friday when the International Olympic Committee rejected Chicago's bid to host the 2016 Olympics. After the president traveled to Copenhagen to lobby for his hometown, the IOC's decision was a slap in the face to the commander-in-chief, you know, the guy who fancies himself as the darling of the international community. But don't worry, Obama's fans aren't blaming him for this failure. They were quick to pin it on their favorite scapegoat, that, of course, George W. Bush. I'm serious. Let's take a look at Illinois Senator Roland Burris and his reaction.
The sense is that we have to look at what happened in the past years and what America, the image of America over the past 8 years in the world. And so Obama has not had time to turn that around on the world stage.
Bush's fault, and Burris was not alone. The Reverend Jesse Jackson, he chimed in as well, saying, quote, the way we refused to sign the Kyoto Treaty, we misled the world into Iraq. The world had a bad taste in its mouth about us. So Burris and Jackson and others blame Bush for making the world hate us. But let me ask, has President Obama given the international community such a positive impression of the United States? I mean, he goes around the world, you know, saying things like this.
There have been times where America has shown arrogance and been dismissive, even derisive. The United States is still working through some of our own darker periods in our history. We've at times been disengaged, and at times we've sought to dictate our terms. We have to acknowledge potentially we've made some mistakes. That's how we learn. Unfortunately, faced with an uncertain threat, our government made a series of hasty decisions. In other words, we went off course. I think that over the last several years, sometimes that fundamental truth about the United States has been lost.
Now, if you ask me, that does not make the U.S. sound like such a great place, certainly not somewhere where anybody would want to come and celebrate the Olympic Games. And joining me now with reaction to all of this is the author of the New York Times #1 bestseller, Catastrophe. Dick Morris is here. Dick, good to see you. Happy Monday.
Good to be here.
Well, I was wrong. I didn't think he'd go to Copenhagen unless the fix was in.
Yeah.
Folks, I'm admitting I was wrong.
Yeah.
But I do have another theory. Your reaction?
Well, I think you're right. I think you were right to be wrong. A good president would have absolutely done that and wouldn't have let himself be slapped in the face like that.
Right. Well, the thing is, all right, here's now the conspiratorial side of me. And you can talk me off the ledge if you want. Now, all right, so he has all these friends in Chicago. We have a lot of unanswered questions about his connections in Chicago. They know him best. Why do I think in the back of my mind that he didn't want to anger Mayor Daley and people that knew him best? Is that fair?
Well, anger is one thing. Go to Copenhagen and make such a personal pitch is quite another. I have a different Machiavellian view. His favorability is up to 52 now from 48. I think there's an American sentiment of rally around the president when he's insulted abroad. It happened with Eisenhower at the U2 summit. It happened very frequently with other presidents. You get hit in the global stage and they rally around you. And I think that may have been in his mind.
Well, so in other words, now you're really thinking on a pretty deep conspiratorial level, but
yep.
anything's possible.
But listen, it's not the IOC that I'm concerned about. It's the G20 that happened the same time as the IOC or a week before. The United States signed over its economic sovereignty to 20 nations, which include the likes of Argentina and Brazil and South Africa and Saudi Arabia and Russia and China, of course. And in Catastrophe, we talk about how the Declaration of Independence is being repealed. And this is the prime example of it. We basically announced that we would let the IMF, the Monetary Fund, decide or help a guide to a consensus what our economic policy ought to be. And they said you have two mandates. You have to lower your deficit, which is fine, and you have to do much more to regulate financial institutions and crack down on CEO pay. And every 3 months, you got to come back to us and tell us how good a job you're doing. And if not, we'll condemn you. At the moment, we'll only use moral sanction, but we might get to economic sanctions as well. And at the same time, Barack Obama succeeded in getting the poor debtor nations in the IMF to increase their vote share from 43% to 48%. That's like having the debtor nations run the bank they owe money to. And this absolutely was American policy at this G20 summit. And in catastrophe, we talk about how this is the opening step in repealing the Declaration of Independence. It's going to put us in the same position as the European nations of being subservient to the European Union and in turn to the IMF.
Do you really believe he'd compromise our sovereignty?
Yes, absolutely. I think that he believes in one world
government.
One world government, and he believes in coordination. You see, basically, the socialists took over, we write this and explain it, the socialists took over France in '81. But it didn't work because everybody went to Reagan's America and Thatcher's Britain. So then the socialists said, let's take over Europe with the European Union. That way they won't flee to another European country. But they all went to the United States. Now they're trying to bring the United States into the global system so that they can impose their socialistic principles of guaranteed vacation, maximum work weeks, force you to blend in this global community, high tax rates, without fleeing to the United States as an alternative. And that's one of the things that's behind this medical care, health care reform, to make us like the rest of the world so they can do their way in Europe without the U.S. getting a competitive advantage.
Certainly, look, we're going to pay the burden for whatever environmental extremism policies are adopted.
Climate change is exactly like that.
We pay the cap and tax is a disaster.
Absolutely.
We pay the majority of the bill at the United Nations only so they can trash us. All right, this is a very, very pivotal, key week in the health care debate.
Yep.
We expect that it may come down to the House and Senate floor.
Yep.
We got 3 different versions in the House, 2 in the Senate. How do you see this now unfolding?
This is very important. First of all, we're losing. I don't know if you're getting the bad news, but you need to learn it. Rasmussen has the approval of the health care package up from 41 to 46, and Obama's approval up from 48 to 52.
Why do you think that happened in just a week?
All those Leno shows and the talk shows and Letterman and all that stuff is having an effect. And he's doing the same smoke and mirrors routine that got him elected. But this time there's a whole lot more at stake.
Yeah.
It's going to come down to 2 votes in the Senate Finance Committee later this week and early next week. 2 people.
Olympia Snowe and Blanche
Lincoln from Arkansas. They're both members of the Senate Finance Committee, Maine and Arkansas. If Snowe votes for this proposal, there's a veneer of bipartisanship that will encourage moderate Democrats to go along.
And they've been lobbying her hard.
And she's voted with the Democrats a few times. If she goes against this, then that sends a signal this is a one-party bill. And then Blanche Lincoln is the single most endangered Democratic incumbent, one most likely to lose. And if she gets the guts to go ahead and vote for this program, all the moderate Democrats are going to say, well, if she can do it, I can do it. But if she flakes on voting for this program like she should and votes against it, it's an open invitation for the moderates to join her in moving away. Pryor, her co-senator, can't remain out there by his lonesome. He's got to go with her. Nebraska, Senator Nelson, Landrieu in Louisiana. And at that point, they can't get 60 votes. And at that point, they have to try for 50. But there's a whole lot of senators that will vote for health care reform if it's 60, but not if it's 50, because they know that someday they will be in the minority, and if the filibuster can be this easily bypassed, they will have no power. So go to dickmorris.com. I am helping to put 10-second ads on in Arkansas and Maine. Every 10 minutes I want that ad on, so that they eat it and breathe it and absorb it. And the ad's very simple.
Blanche Lincoln.
It says, Senator Lincoln, don't cut my Medicare by $500 billion. I need my Medicare.
All right, Dick, we're going to continue. This is a big week for this.
This is the week.
This is it. All right, and thanks for being with us.
There have been times where America has shown arrogance and been dismissive, even derisive. The United States is still working through some of our own darker periods in our history. We've at times been disengaged, and at times we've sought to dictate our terms. We have to acknowledge potentially we've made some mistakes. That's how we learn. Unfortunately, faced with an uncertain threat, our government made a series of hasty decisions. In other words, we went off course. I think that over the last several years, sometimes that fundamental truth about the United States has been lost.